Welcome to Automation Unscripted, an educational, frank, and fun podcast dedicated to the art of business process automation. Automation Unscripted is brought to you by Virtual Operations, a leading consultancy in digital transformation, with more than a decade's experience working with organizations to help them grow their return on investment in automation.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Automation Unscripted. Today, we're going to be covering blockchain and intelligent automation, or specifically RPA, how the two link, how they interact, and how one can be used alongside the other in order to automate processes and make them more secure. This week, we're going to be joined by Richard instead of Kieran, because Richard would be the go-to man at Virtual Operations for everything blockchain. So, Richard, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Richard Owen. As Dan says, I know a few things about blockchain. I was the author of a blockchain blog called Blockchain Demystified, or Demystifying Blockchain, which sort of came about because blockchain has its own sort of lexicon of terms, and there was a lot of confusion, particularly amongst the people we talk to. So we brought it down into straightforward, simple terms with business benefits, which is what most people are interested in. My background has been in technology businesses for the last 20 years, both as an owner and as a consultant. So, and particularly in regulated industries where data security is absolutely paramount. And of course, blockchain, one of the things about it is data security. So that's where my interest lies with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to completely throw you under the bus, Richard. We do, just to preface before I go into it, we do have a blockchain partner whose expertise is specifically in blockchain, but from an intelligent automation and a virtual operations standpoint, Richard would be the go-to. So, Richard, why don't we start? All right, when people normally think of blockchain, a lot of people immediately go into crypto, right, which is the native token of the actual underlying technology. That's where most people start when they think of it. They think of Bitcoin, they think of Ethereum. But what we're talking about today is the underlying tech, the actual blockchain tech. So why don't you go a little bit into that, sort of some of the history around it?
Sure. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, whenever you say blockchain, people tend to think of cryptocurrencies, and that is a huge application of blockchain. But actually, blockchain as a technology has been around for over 30 years. It was developed way back in 1991 by a couple of clever chaps, and they created it to as a way to secure digital timestamps. So when a document or an image is produced, they need a way to prove it was done then, as opposed to being meddled with later. Now, much more recently, so in 2008, we had the introduction of Bitcoin, and blockchain was a natural technology to support Bitcoin, because of its security. And then technologies like Ethereum have come along, and it's sort of really gone gangbusters since then. So it's not just used for cryptocurrencies. There are some big successful companies using it for everything, including supply chain management. It's been used in healthcare, finance, certifying the validity of diamonds, real estate transactions. So it's been used a lot. We don't hear that much about it over the last couple of years, because I think AI has come in, and that as a technology has got a bit more space in the newspapers. But blockchain is definitely still there, and still delivering lots of valuable things.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about AI, crypto, or AI and blockchain over the last, say, year or so. It really has become its own sort of sector and area, or all into itself.
So I can give a little dummy's guide as to what blockchain actually is. It's got a fancy name and lots of fancy terminology around it. But at the end of the day, it's a digital record-keeping system. But it's not all kept in one place. So a lot of companies previously might have kept all their records on their own servers and things like that, and then there was cloud computing. But this is actually distributed data, so it's kept on a network of computers. And that network is important because nobody actually has sole control over the data, which is very important for security. So no bad actor can come in and change the data. So when a transaction happens, so for example, a record is updated, it's grouped with other transactions into a block, which and it's a network block. So that's why it's called blockchain. And that block links to the previous block. So there ends up being multiple copies of data, of the same data, which keep getting added to. And each block is secured using, and I hate to use a complicated term, but it's something called a cryptographic hash, which is a very, very, very secure way of keeping data. That's a subject for another one. I actually worked out how they work. It's very clever. And that makes it tamper-proof. So the thing about nobody owning each block is that all the participants must agree on the validity of new data coming in because it has to match all the other blocks. So this means that there's transparency, security, because altering one block would require changing all the other blocks. So if somebody hacks one of the computers, it doesn't then match with all the other computers, so that it's raised. So it's a sort of super secure, decentralized record keeping system. And I think one of the most important things that we're going to discuss today is when we talk about intelligent automation and RPA, it inevitably involves data of one kind or another being transcribed, being processed. And one of the things that's upstream and downstream from that is if the data isn't valid, then the automation won't be doing the right thing, or it'll be coming up with the right answer to the wrong set of data. So that is really why we're talking about blockchain and RPA today, because many people using RPA will be using data, and security of that data is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that with some of our clients, right? It is number one, the security of their data. That is the most important thing to them. And then adding the element like you just talked about of a blockchain technology where that data literally cannot be changed from block to block. It seems to be a bit of a no-brainer, right? One seems to match perfectly with the other.
Totally. And one of the first applications I saw of this in practice, in reality, was actually in customer service. So there's a lot of automation in customer service outsourcing companies. You know, they handle customer inquiries and things like that. But for outsourcers, actually, they have to show to their clients that client data is absolutely rock solid secure. So as well as having the automation in there to help answer customer queries and things like that, they use blockchain networks to make sure that customer data is going nowhere outside of their jurisdiction.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that, we talked about, I mean, I know Kieran uses this word a lot, dynamic duo. That's sort of what we've put these two as, right? RPA and blockchain. And you can see from sort of even how you've explained how the technology works, you can see some of the real benefits of using this type of tech. So the first one you went into was enhanced security and data integrity, right? Yeah. That, as we said, for most clients and organizations is paramount. So marrying up the two and making sure that is secure and something that's been taken care of using blockchain technology seems to be a perfect combo, or dynamic duo, as we've been saying. I think the next one as well, in terms of benefits of blockchain, would be the increased transparency and trust, correct? Yeah,
for sure. Because the blockchain is effectively decentralized, so there's no one owner of it. So that automatically, particularly when you're doing something like a supply chain over blockchain, it fosters trust amongst the people involved because there's a verifiable audit trail within there.
Yeah, and I think this one also falls into the other two, automated compliance and auditability. I mean, I've had so many instances where I'm working with a client and then all of a sudden they've been audited. As soon as they're audited, everything is dropped and it's sole focused, no matter what the priorities were, all on, hey, how do we handle this audit? Yeah. Now, with utilizing blockchain is almost perfect for when you do get an audit. You have all the information there and everything's readily available to that audit team.
No, I agree, and it's also real time. So sometimes when you have an audit, you have to scramble together to pull everything together. Whereas this has got auditability built into it, so you can show anybody at any time the proof that everything is working as it should be.
Yeah, and I mean that can be so valuable, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is when clients will drop everything to work on a 2-week audit.
Yeah,
no matter how important it is.
Yeah, it's very distressing, and also, you know, by the end of it, you've just passed the audit. You've lost all that time, but you're not actually any better off as a business, are you? It's just not worth it.
Yeah. What about the fourth one then? Efficiency and secure data sharing.
Yeah. Well, the efficiency and secure data sharing is really around the fact that there are often in a blockchain network lots of parties dealing with each other, because people use them to conduct transactions, and everybody can verify that the transaction is valid. And this sort of dovetails in with the RPA piece, because RPA automates the process of data extraction and integration, but it extracts that from a blockchain-powered network, which is sort of super secure. So it's a much more efficient way of having unquestionable data.
Yeah, and part there when you said unquestionable data, that's the immutable aspect, right? Hey, this actually can't be tampered with, and I'll use that term, immutable. Yeah.
Which brings us to the next point, which is around the reduced fraud and errors. So sometimes people talk about, well, when quantum computing comes up, blockchain will no longer be quite as secure. But I think we're somewhere away from that. And then, of course, we'll use quantum computing to change the cryptography of blockchain anyway. So it'll be even more secure.
I can't remember what that argument was, why quantum would replace blockchain. Or wasn't it? It could figure out how to tamper with the ledger itself, or do you know?
It's breaking the cryptographic hash, because the hash is like breaking a code. Due to the length of the hash, I think it's like 12 digits. It's quite a long code to break. And of course, the number of possibilities when you've got 12 digits is in the trillions. So it's very hard to do. But of course, if you have a powerful enough computer, then it will do that. On the other hand, when we get to, we're diverging a little bit here, but when we have an internal virtual operations debate about this, but of course, at the point where we have a quantum computer that can break a 12-digit cryptographic hash, we'll have a quantum computer which can create 1,000-digit cryptographic hash. So it's probably a moot point, I think.
Yeah, all good. So what I wanted to do next, Richard, was for everyone listening, is to just go through a scenario, right? A specific, and this isn't a real scenario. It's just a scenario that has been done in the past. No specific clients, no specific organization, to really help explain how blockchain and RPA can link together, right? Yeah. And sort of in a single process, what they would both be doing. So the scenario here is we've got a large hospital that wants to enhance its security, efficiency, accuracy when it comes to prescription management systems. So the plan here and the two technologies that they'll be utilizing are RPA and blockchain.
You can see how blockchain with RPA could be of massive benefit here, because as a business, we do a lot of work with healthcare organizations, and we do know that with prescription management, there's the issue of prescription fraud, there's errors, the wrong thing being prescribed. And then there's tampering, because some prescriptions are, extremely serious controlled substances, and they shouldn't get into the wrong hands. So, and of course, there are fake medicines out there as well.
Yeah, I was reading there was a large pharmacy in the US, I won't name any names, that recently went through this and effectively had to shut down quite a number of their pharmacies because of this exact problem.
Yeah.
And the solution there to that problem you were talking about, this is where blockchain comes in, right? So the hospital that we're talking about here was able to implement a blockchain-based system to help manage those prescriptions. So each prescription is then recorded on the blockchain, which provides then that secure, immutable ledger, which means can't be changed, can't be modified, and you have all your information there. And then this then ensures that once a prescription is written and recorded, it actually can't be tampered with.
Yeah. And I think a real benefit of this is that lots of different people can be accessing different records within the blockchain. Mm-hmm. So you've got the doctor writing a prescription, and it's digitally signed and recorded. But then you've got a pharmacist involved as well. Now, the pharmacist doesn't want to see every record that's in the blockchain, but because of how it works, they can see just the information that they need to see. And they know, because of the system, they can verify its authenticity before they dispense the medicine, which can be a bit of a challenge for them without this kind of security. And then, of course, you got the third player in here, which is the most important one, which is the patient who needs their medication. So they can access their prescription history through a secure patient portal, and that itself is based on the same records which are in the blockchain. So everybody's working off the same set of data.
Yeah, so you've got the doctor there, you've got the pharmacist, and you've got the patients.
Yeah.
All three of them interacting in one shape or form with the blockchain.
Absolutely, but I think a key thing that we might not have raised in here before is that you can have different people participating in the blockchain, but that doesn't mean they're saying all the records that are stored on the blockchain. They're seeing the records that apply to them.
Yeah, like the patient you said just then, they'll only have access to their records, right? Not everything. It's everything that's available.
Yeah, totally.
So that would be the blockchain part of the process. You've then got where RPA would come in, and for the prescription fulfillment and monitoring, right? So the problem there would be actually manually processing prescriptions is an incredibly time-consuming process and very prone to errors. So adding in that layer of RPA helps automate the prescription fulfillment process, and you add in that continuous monitoring piece as well. You've then tackled those problems that you had of the errors and the time consumption utilizing RPA. So why don't you run through then what that process would look like, same as we did for blockchain?
Well, we know that it's very time consuming, but it's the RPA part of it is really around reducing the paperwork and the time taken for somebody to actually receive their prescription. So we know where the data is coming from, because we just talked about blockchain. But often a pharmacist will have to conduct a number of checks before they can actually dispense. So, for example, checks on has the patient already had this prescription today or this week? Are they trying to reuse a prescription note? Do they have a history of abuse of certain medications? There's a whole host of checks. I think in one client we worked with, there were 19 checks or 20 checks need to be gone through. Now our RPA can do all of those checks instead of the pharmacist having to go into the computer, dig them out, or even use paper-based records. I think in one instance we've done it, and we've reduced the prescription time from 15, 20 minutes to seconds, haven't we, for it to be done, because all of those checks are done. All of the paperwork is created automatically through the automated system.
Yeah, so you can see there, right? We had blockchain and RPA integrating together and looking at some of those benefits exactly on this case study that the hospital initially wanted, right? You've got that enhanced security and data integrity, transparency and trust. Main one there, human errors, fraud, tampering. And then you've got the fact that nothing can be changed because of the fact that we're utilizing blockchain. So you can see there just one example. And I mean, we could go through 10, 20, 30 different examples of what we've seen in the past, right? This is just a high level, simple example of how those two technologies can work together. Yeah,
totally. And it brings out all the attributes of blockchain in terms of the secure and immutable data and things like that. But the RPA is adding the layer that reduces the need for human input, where humans can be doing something more valuable.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Richard, based on the back of this, whatever questions we might get after this pod comes out, we can then build on this topic, right? This is just the bare bones of blockchain RPA. We can expand on this and go into multiple other areas depending on what some of those questions might be. So if you are listening, don't think this is just the only podcast we're going to do on blockchain. If we do get those questions, we can definitely expand here, and we can even bring in our blockchain partners if we want to get super technical and start going into the weeds on some of this stuff.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things are explained by good use cases, and as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of well-known companies that have invested heavily in blockchain for what they do. Quick examples. Renault. The average Renault vehicle has more than 6,000 components. Did you know that?
I did not.
And Renault globally had a bit of a challenge in terms of receiving counterfeit components, which can happen, when you're operating globally. Whereas using a blockchain network to keep an eye on those components when they're being made and then when they're being sent over and where they're being stored in the inventory and everything means they have complete confidence that the parts, well, they know where they are for a start, but they have complete confidence the parts are there. And De Beers, which is a very well-known diamond company, they have exactly the same sort of thing. So that as a customer of De Beers, if you're buying an engagement ring or anything else with a diamond in it, that the diamond you're getting is a De Beers diamond and where it's actually come from. So and those are just a few examples.
You can see how vast it is there, right? You just covered in quickly cars, diamonds, and then we also covered healthcare.
Yeah, insurance claims as well, because it stops people claiming twice on the same incident because all the insurers have the same record. Whereas before they used to keep all separate records individually. So there's lots of areas like that. One thing I'd like to add, Dan, before we wrap up, is some people listening might be thinking, okay, well, we got automation. I like the idea of blockchain and all the data security and tamper-proof and error reductions and things like that. But it sounds like a big expense to set up a whole network of computers, each running the blockchain, and how do I go about that? Now, a lot of companies don't have to do that because blockchains exist in lots of places. So, names that like Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, they have blockchains that you can hire. So it's like software as a service, or it's blockchain as a service. So as a business, you can actually, and it's still secure, it's your own blockchain, but within a bigger blockchain, you can actually have one yourself as a business. And it doesn't mean you're suddenly investing in a global network of nodes that hold the data.
Yeah, so on that then, because these types of, or the accessibility is there, it just means that cost is then reduced, right? Usability and accessibility, right? All of those things are now much more readily available than they were before. Yeah, absolutely. So there is blockchain for the masses, and in fact, there are sort of industry-specific blockchains out there. Ones that help retail businesses, ones that help property transactions. So they're configured in a particular way that makes them extremely user-friendly for businesses in that sector. Yep, supply chain, BE chain, we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
There's a whole wealth of them. There's actually too many to even name anymore. There's thousands. Some
there are
more than others.
Yeah, and there's new ones every week. So if we did it, then the podcast will be out of date by next month. So we won't name all of them.
Yeah, so I think that's a good spot to wrap up as well, Richard. Why don't I'll quickly summarize what we talked about so far. So we went through blockchain and RPA, introduced some of the history around blockchain, how it works. We talked about some of the benefits and efficiencies of utilizing blockchain. And then we provided a case study or multiple case studies, but the main one was at hospital and prescription fulfillments utilizing both blockchain and RPA. I think we covered the topic pretty well there. And as I said, we may expand on this if there's some popularity around this pod, because I think it's a really interesting topic and one that has many avenues to go down. Thanks for joining today, Richard. I think this was great.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, everybody.
See you next time.